these types of helicorders we show 12 hours. So this is midday down to midnight on January the 17th. So this is during the day, and you'll notice that this period during the day there's some increased activity, and that's really due to human activity. We call that cultural noise. And that can be like road traffic that we're picking up on the sensors. It can be any kind of building work or construction or anything of that type that's going on near the site. So what we tend to do is we tend to ignore that time during the day because it's got this noise on it that we don't really want to kind of put in our minds when we're looking at this stuff. So we tend to ignore the daytime hours and then just look at the nighttime hours when it goes much quieter. And you can see this decay of noise down into the nighttime hours. Now this is still an active period. This is leading up to this large sinkhole event, this burp that happened on January the 19th that you might have heard about. Now there's two types of events on here. There are these very long period events which last for minutes. So each one of these lines is 15 minutes long. So there's 4 per hour. This is a continuous record of the vibrations, the sound that we're hearing at each of this instrument. What you're seeing here is you're seeing one of these very long period events occurring over a number of minutes. And this is what we believe is gas movement or fluid movement through voids and that kind of thing underground. These, what people have come to call sharp events, are micro-earthquakes. And these are what I was talking about are associated with fractures moving. And they're kind of tied together because they all relate to some disturbance that's happening in the rock underground in this disturbed zone. So this next one, this is the next 12 hours. So this is midnight through to midday on the 18th, and we're getting closer to this big burp event that occurred on the 19th. And actually, at this point, as I say, there's a team of seismologists that are regularly looking at this helicorders. I look at these every single morning, and Steve Horton at the University of Memphis is involved as well. And we at this point, we knew that something was happening. There was some change going on underground. So we were notifying the people in authority, the emergency response, that something was happening, and warning them that there was some behaviour. And I really think that's the key here. We're now getting enough instrumentation into this site that we can start saying, like, hey, there's more activity going on. Go on to a higher watch alert. Keep an eye out on that sinkhole. Something might be happening. And then they can start taking workers away from the sinkhole and that kind of thing, so we get some safety in there. So again, this is daylight hours. So this is 6 a.m. When people started to kind of get out in their cars, and you can see the increase in noise. But I think you can see that this kind of activity, this natural activity, has increased a bit more. So we'll go on to the next 12 hours. Now it's increasing a lot more. You're seeing these very long period events coming in. Now we go on to the 19th in the morning, and now we're coming up to a real big crescendo in activity that's going on underground. And we could feel this in the helicorders as we watch this. As we get through to 10 a.m., I was actually on a conference call with the people at DNR and Shaw, and when this actually happened, this 10 a.m. this burp event occurred. So we were really able to understand that something was happening and that we had to get people away from the sinkhole to safety. Now I want to reiterate, this is all very small events. Out of all of this activity, I only heard of one person feeling something, and he was actually stood close to the wellbore pad for Oxy 3, so he was right on the Texas Blind side. So these events you wouldn't have felt, but we can see them on our instrumentation and start to say what's going on underground. This long period of 15-20 minutes of activity is when that gas came up through the sinkhole and was emitted through the sinkhole. Afterwards, it all quietened down. The whole thing was over. The indigestion, if you like, was finished. And kind of move on. So if you go to the next 12 hours, there's a little bit of quietening down, some kind of little activity that's going on, and I'll show you a chart in a minute where you can see there's a bit more, but everything's really subsiding and kind of quietening down, and that's so redundant. So this is that chart I was mentioning. This is the count of micro-earthquakes per day. This was put together by Professor Horton at the University of Memphis. This is the background activity that we're seeing. On this instrumentation on the surface, we know what the sensitivity is. It's constant all the way through this period. We're seeing about 0 to 10 events per day. As we get closer to this burp event, those micro-earthquakes increase. We see more and more of them, as I was showing you in the helicopters, and then it peaks on the 19th, and then decays away. And this decay is something that we observe in rock mechanics quite a lot. It's just the reaction of the rock just kind of relaxing. We also have been looking at these VLP events. This is some work that Julie Shemetta has been doing. As I say, she's consultant to Texas Brine. She's working with a company called Western Geophysical, who's also contracted on the project. This is the number of these very long period events occurring each day. And this goes back all the way to August, when the sinkhole first appeared. And you can see there's these ups and downs in activity all the way through this period. In fact, there was this large peak in November when there was one of these burps back then that we observed. 2 burps back then that we observed at this time. In January, this is the period that I was just talking about. 19th of January, again we see this peak, and then it just subsides away, and we don't see very much of this activity, and then it's picking up again a little bit here. So what I want to get onto now is to talk about the microseismic array that's going in. This is really a very sensitive set of instrumentation that we're putting down into the salt. And we're doing that to really understand a bit more about where these events are coming from. What we're going to do is we're going to put that down in Oxy 1 well, which goes into the Oxy 1 cavern at about 2,500 feet down. And this really complements all the other instrumentation that we have in this area now, the 450-foot well that I was talking to you about, which just goes into the cap rock. This buried surface array with all these sensors at 80 foot down in depth, and this 1,000-foot shallow array that's going in. So we're really putting in instrumentation to really watch what's happening underground and understand this some more. So as I say, we want to more accurately determine the positions of where these micro-earthquakes are and their relation to this rock disturb zone that we believe is there between the cavern and the surface. And we also want to observe if there's micro-earthquakes occurring at deeper depths, at depths below 2,500 feet. See if they're related to the Oxy 3 cavern and how that's behaving. This is the type of instrumentation that's going in. It's called a string of geophones. In this case, there's going to be 12 geophones. This is the temporary array, I should note. The temporary array will go in for a number of weeks, and then a permanent array will go in based on what we observe. We're going to design that permanent array to be specific to the activity that we observe. So this temporary array is going to go in. It's a string of geophones, 50 feet apart. So it's about 600 feet long. It goes down into the well, and it sits down there. It's clamped into the borehole, and it listens to all the activity that's going on underground, and we get very good high sensitivity data from underground. This is just a view of where that temporary array is going to go. This is the Oxy 1 cavern. This is the kind of dimension of that temporary microseismic array. It's going to sit down there and it's going to listen to all this volume out here to really locate where all this activity is going on with great accuracy. We're also going to listen to greater depths around the Oxy 3 cavern and really look at how this behaviour of this disturbed rock zone is going on up to the ground surface. I'm showing you this because really to give you an idea of what this data looks like. This is actually some microseismic data that I was involved in with a monitoring, oil field monitoring job in Texas. That's another point. This is like standard oil field technology now that we're bringing here to really kind of help out. We put in an array of geophones. This is pretty much the geometry that we're going to be using at Bayou Corn. It's about 500 foot in dimension. We listen to using those geophones, and we record these waveforms. We can then get these seismic arrivals from these waveforms, and using those we can then calculate exactly where this activity has occurred. So what I've got here is a little movie of this this particular case, this example, and this is actually a fracturing project in an oil field. Again, here's the geophones, and this is the this microseismic imaging that's watching these fractures grow. And that's what we're going to be able to do at Bayou Corn. We're really going to see where this activity is, and therefore understand it a lot more. At that point, I'm going to hand over to Gary. One more slide, sorry. We put this one in because we wanted to show that right now there's a lot of cultural noise going on the site. Okay, and this cultural noise is associated that they're building these levees around the sinkhole. So this is the civil engineering work that's going on. So it's truck noise. You can see it starts at 7 a.m. and around about 7 a.m. in the morning when the trucks start rolling. And what we're literally being kind of seeing a lot of this kind of activity going on, which is just human related. At night, it quietens down, and this is the micro-earthquakes, very long period events that we're observing. So are there any questions?
I have one. You gave us the likely dimensions of the disturbed rock zone. Do you believe that of the final disturbed rock zone, do you believe that we will get to the final state by the end of this year, or do you think we'll get there by the end of the decade, or what do you think?
I showed you the dimensions, what we see, our best estimate of the dimensions of the sinkhole, which relates to the disturbed zone, yes. 730 foot diameter is most likely, but really you could get up to that 1400 foot, but that's the most unlikely worst case scenario. That really relates to what's happening underground, and in particular the filling of the cavern with this debris that's going on. Once that debris starts getting towards the top and reaches the top of the cavern, then the disturbed zone will kind of come to some form of equilibrium and will start reaching the maximum development of that sinkhole. Now, it all relates really to answer your question, it really relates to how quickly that cavern starts completing and filled up. And our Texas brine is tagging, what they call tagging the top of that fill. I think it's every month or so.
Every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks. Every
well,
2 weeks.
Well, the reason that I asked the question about the time is over the last several months, and I don't remember whether it's 3 months or 4 months, but the level of the debris in the cavern has come up about 200 feet. And you just said that it's got 500 feet to go.
Right.
So 500 feet to go, if it were proportional, might be a year, but it won't be 10 years.
And Gary, in his slides, has a chart showing that. So he'll be able to describe a little bit more about that exact thing.